Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay, I hope now the recording has started. So yeah, so last class we stopped here that what is dimensional homogeneity and why it is necessary. So we have seen that a valid equation should be dimensionally homogeneous. Okay, but an equation that is dimensionally homogeneous can be invalid as well. So now, before we go into the main content of our subject, let me understand, or let me see how much you are aware of these things, which are basically, say, the data representation and analysis. Say you measure certain values, okay, that can be, say, you measured concentration of certain solution, okay. Now that concentration, say, it changes with time, okay. So you made a concentration and some reaction, or say some flow is happening, so its concentration is changing with time. Now in that case, you cannot measure the concentration at each and every time. You need to have certain interval, okay. Now that data, say, is ready, that you already have now your so now you have your data, which is at certain t, you have the value of concentration. So at t is equals to t1, you have c is equals to c1, and similarly it goes on. Now say after this analysis, you are asked, or say you have to tell someone that what is the concentration of the solution in between time t1 to t2. Say I name this as t11. So it is not only the measurement, but also analysis of this data. So for that, this means that we need some interpolated value. We have at two discrete points the concentrations. We have to now estimate a concentration which is in between our two measurement interval. Fine. So say ideally, or if I say somehow you have got this kind of a scattered plot. Now this is very easy, the part 1, okay. So here if you see that this falls in a straight line, so it is easy to derive a straight line expression, and then once you have the straight line expression, you can put your desired desired time, that where you need that value, and you can get the concentration. So it here basically x axis is the time and c is the concentration. Somehow you have got the experimental or the measured values in this kind of a scattered plot, or say not so straight line values, which is actually happens. So in these cases, what is to be done? The typical a thumb rule, or say the typical process that we do in these cases, we call the data fitting of the process. So we have now here we have our scattered values, and here it's a not so linear plot. We would say the non-linear plots. Now, how to estimate the values from here? Because if it's a straight line, the interpolation is easier. Or even say you have been asked, okay, you stopped at your measurement at T5, say T5 and C5. So someone has asked that what would be this concentration if you had continued your measurement after this time step or after this time, say at T6, what is C6? So then we say this is the extrapolation. This is the interpolation and this is the extrapolation. So how do we do that? You already have done basic mathematics class in your first year. You already possibly have heard these terms and you can remember. So we need to quickly brush up those memory. So a 2-point linear interpolation is pretty much straightforward. That if you had these two values, say the T1 C1 and T2 C2, you can easily fit a straight line. Okay, so here the value of the it is written in generic form where it is x1 y1 and x2 y2 are the two discrete points. You get a straight line expression and then you try to get whatever in between. So this kind of fitting works best if you have been asked to calculate the interpolated value. Did you get this point? If you had to do some interpolation or intermediate data, this 2-point linear interpolation fits very well because you already have covered the range of the measured values and something in between you have been asked. Okay, so now if the points are widely separated, which means in this case, say as I mentioned earlier, that the scenario can be you have this kind of a closed space points, or in other case you can have say this kind of widely spread scenario, or you have to extrapolate the data. Then usually we say it's not the 2-point interpolation but the curve fitting technique that should be used to get those data. So what are the curve fitting technique? Usually we prefer a straight line fit because that's easier to handle, isn't it? So a straight line expression, y is equals to ax plus b. Now once we say here in this figure, if it's a closed space one, as I mentioned earlier, that you can have a straight line fit easier. Now when this is a scattered plot, widely spaced points, we still try to fit a best fit curve or best fit line in between that. Now which one is the best one, because we can draw several lines through that, this I leave it to you with your understanding of regression that you have already done in your maths class, or the least square fitting calculations, the least square method for curve fit or straight line fit. But once you have that, then what you can see or you can do, you can find out that what is your slope, which is a, and after you get your slope, you can find out by any of the points what is the value of b. That once we have this, you can calculate what is a and what is b. b by any of this expression, any of the points, either x1 y1 or x2 y2. Now once you have say used this point to calculate your value of b with the help of a, you should cross check your result or try to fit this value in this expression then with the known value of a and b, whether that matches or not. Am I clear? That you have used any one of the points to calculate the value of b. Then one point is left. That should be used to cross check your straight line fit, that how much it is deviating. or what is the accuracy? This expression. I hope you were able to see everyone here that we have y square is equals to ax cube plus b. Is it a straight line expression? Can you present this data in a straight line manner?
Yes,
Because
sir.
straight line is always easier to handle. So if you look, so our objective should be that we present it as a quantity 1 and quantity b in this relation somehow by rearranging the expressions or something. Then the life becomes easier, because then here say you can plot x cube and here y square. It would give you a straight line with a slope of a and intercept of b. Okay, so then this expression we should plot x square versus y to have linear fit of this expression. So we can say that these are the linear fit of the nonlinear data. Similarly here in this expression, can someone tell me that how to present this in a straight line fit, or how can I get a straight line fit? Right. So similarly here as well. Now I think you have got the point. Okay. So similarly these two expressions, apparently these are, in fact these are the all nonlinear expressions. But this also, say, tell me this one, the sine one, it is interesting. So how do you do that? What you should plot in x and y here? So tell me the x axis and the y axis of this last equation that you see. What would be my x axis? X square minus 4. And y axis would be sine y. What would be the nature of this curve? Very easy question. The straight line which will pass through the origin. So you should be able to quickly recognize this kind of data, okay, and try to fit this to get either interpolation or extrapolation. Now, the other thing is that, say, this kind of expression, what you call this expression? The first one, can you tell me? The generic class exponential function. Perfect. So this is either it can be written as y is equals to a e to the power bx, or in this fashion. Different book, different nomenclature. So this is called exponential function, and this one y is equals to a into x to the power b. We call this as power law function. Okay. Can someone quickly tell me what is the relation between natural log and common log? How do you convert a value of natural log to common log? Right. So it is if I say this is the natural log ln, it is basically 2.303 log x, which is 10 base, or the common log, or just simple log we say. Okay, so you should be able to convert this as well, because the point here, the first one, y is equals to this exponential function. What we can do, we can take log on, or the natural log on both the sides, and we can convert this as a straight line when we plot ln y versus x. If this is y and this is x, it gives us a slope of b with the intercept of ln a. Fine. So similarly, when we talk about this other one, which is the power law expression, what we have, if we take log on both the sides, we then have to plot ln y versus ln x, or the log y versus log x. That will give us a slope of b and intercept of log a. Now, this means that if you have this kind of an analytical expression, See, there is a term I have mentioned is called the analytical expression. Can someone tell me what is the difference between analytical and experimental? What I meant by analytical and what is experimental? Any idea? So it is either the derived expression or solved expression. Okay. So for analytical expression, if you have anything, say in this expression that I mentioned to the power bx, if this is the analytical expression, there is no point of doing any interpolation, extrapolation. You just the put of value of unknown x and get the value of unknown y with confidence. Experimental values are the scattered points. So typical thumb rule, this I tell everyone whenever I get the opportunity to the PhD students or the MTech students, or even you when we do the BTPs, the difference between analytical plot and experimental plot, that experimental plots are always in this dotted legend because you have measured at certain x these values. It is never a continuous line. You feed the experimental data with a continuous line. You try to feed because you have to get an expression. Am I clear? So these are the experimental points or representation of experimental values. The analytical solution could be something like this kind of a continuous function, which is because it is valid everywhere. The difference between these two gives us the error or the percentage error. Okay, so coming back to this text is that, so say we have this kind of a trend of the data. Okay, so how do we plot that? Clearly, one way is that we have converted linear expression that I plot now, or say my data is given in this fashion that it is x by y. So all the values are mentioned here. So I at first convert this to ln x and ln y and then start plotting those values to get my linear fit, isn't it? Or the other way can be I somehow directly plot in a certain kind of graph paper this direct xy value and it would give me a straight line. That leads to the concept of log-log and semi-log graph paper, or simple log graph paper and semi-log graph paper. Now, the reason I'm telling these things is that it is not much of relevant nowadays because we have so technological advancement that typically Excel, MATLAB, any kind of software does this for you. But earlier, the engineers had to plot this manually in a graph paper. And in a rectangular graph paper, they had to convert at first these expressions to this logarithmic value and then plot it and then get the straight line slope and then get intercept and all these values. So they invented or they constructed graph paper, which are, as I said, it's called the log-log or semi-log values. Now, I hope these graph papers are visible to you. So in the first one, if you look here in the first one, the x-axis, you see that this is already a rectangular scale values, that 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the conventional graph paper, we call it the rectangular graph paper. Okay. But on the y-axis, you notice the difference. That this is 1, this is 2, 3, 4, 5. So these lines have changed because these are basically the logarithmic values that are already converted. Okay. Any question here? Okay, so this is the case as I mentioned. So here we see that this x-axis is my normal scale or rectangular scale, but y-axis is the log scale. So this is called basically the semi-log graph paper. Okay, so here we have the log uh, graph, because here in the x-axis we have the log scale, as well as on the y-axis we have the log scale. This is called simply log paper or log graph paper. Now the utility you would now realize in these two expressions. The first one, or the exponential one, I can easily plot that in semi-log graph paper. That we have x as a rectangular scale and log y, or basically y, is the logarithmic scale. If I plot this thing in the semi-log paper, it would give me a straight line with a slope of a and intercept of b. In the case of power law, we see that when we converted that to log expressions, both are in logarithmic scale. We plot here without converting x and y directly, and we get the straight line plot. So I would give a pause here to get any question, to have any question, if you have anything. Yes, but you never plot logarithmic values of x and logarithmic values of y on the log plot or semi-log plot. The reason is that now we see that how it came or how it can be constructed. So see, this is a rectangular scale. If this had to be plotted in a rectangular scale, the exponential function. Here we have the rectangular scale of x, and this is the rectangular scale of y. But then you have to convert that to ln y. Instead, if you come to this axis, which corresponds to the exact value of this one, but in exponential manner, then you basically have the only value of y, and here you see the log, the normal log of 1, the logarithmic value of 1 as corresponding value on the this rectangular scale as 0, the natural log of 1. And that is why in a log plot, whichever axis is logarithmic, you cannot start by putting a 0 or 0 values. There will be not a 0 value. Did you get the reason? In rectangular scale, you can put a 0 here, but in
Yes,
log plot,
it
it
got
would
it.
exactly. So the rule is that in semi-log paper or in log paper, we never put any axis of log values, be it either normal or the natural log. So any question till this point? These are again preliminary concepts that we are brushing up, but these are the vital concepts. Again, you may not you in fact possibly you have to plot these things in your fluid flow lab when you do that physically, when you come back to campus, or even in heat and mass transfer lab. You possibly have to plot or analyze your experimental values, and then your instructor will tell you that bring a log paper tomorrow or bring a semi-log graph paper tomorrow, and that is easily available in the market. But that actually makes our life much simpler, and the reason you can see it here. Okay, fine. So now say we have got the result, we have analyzed the result. Now we want to know, or since we are engineers and have inquisitive mind, we actually ask that does it make sense, or is it a valid result? And you should often ask that as an engineer. So how to know that your answer is correct or close to correct? There are few simple thumb rules, I would say. And in fact, you did one of or couple of them in your class 2 studies already. That when you were given a lesson in math, that sometimes you need to recheck your answer with a back substitution, which is straightforward, that after you solve a set of equation, substitute your solution back into the equation and check whether it works or not. Okay, this you have done already. The other thing can be the order of magnitude estimation. So what do you understand by order of magnitude? Can someone tell me that what you understand by order of magnitude? Right. Okay. So say I say that a number which is say 63,472. Okay. So how can I write this in a simple manner in terms of order of magnitude, rough estimation? See, the point is it is a crude and easy to obtain approximation of the answer, and making sure that more exact solution comes reasonably close to it. So this expression, how can I roughly write in terms of a number that would be easy to calculate further or easy to handle further if we have subsequent steps? 6 into 10 to the power 4, the order of magnitude 10 to the power 4, isn't it? So basically 6.3472 into 10 to the power 4, this number. Did you get the point? So roughly it can be 6 into 10 to the power 4. Now say by this definition or by this kind of a rule, I give you okay, everybody from now onward should sit with a calculator open on your screen or a hand calculator, whatever you find comfortable, because we will see a couple of small problems. Say 0.5, I give 0.524 divided by 0.000478. Now, how you can easily do this by calculator, no issues. But if I had to illustrate this order of magnitude estimation or calculation example, or say without calculator, how do you do this one? Can someone tell me by looking at the previous example that I gave you?
So we can extract out the power on 10 in each term.
Right. So let's go one by one term. So the first term. First means this one. What should I write? You can guide me.
3.672.
No. Again, look at this example. This is, we are doing order of approximations, very crude, and which can be done by hand calculation. Which can be done by hand calculation.
So 3 into 10 raised to the power 4.
Again, remember your last class.
4 into 10 raised to the power 4 into 10
Exactly. 4 into 10 to the power 4. Then the next term.
5 into 10 to the power minus 2.
Exactly. And then divided by
4 into 10 raised to the power 5 into 10 raised to the power minus 4.
Yes. So this is basically 5 into 10 to the power minus 4. So what is the result? 10 power 6. Okay. Now can you quickly do this in your computer or calculator, this calculation, and tell me the result? 4.025 into 10 to the power 6. See how close we are. That without even calculator, we came to a very close value with the order of magnitude analysis or estimation. But for that, you have to follow certain thumb rule. Had you taken here 3, the result could have been deviating a large value. Is it clear? Any question at this point? Fine. If not, then The other point is that, so this is the order of magnitude, and the other point that we should look is the test of reasonableness of your result, the solution that makes sense. Fine. So what does that mean? This means, say you have gotten solution, or say the water is flowing through a pipe. For this problem, you somehow got a solution where the velocity of water is higher than the speed of light. That doesn't make any sense. So that means your answer would be wrong. You calculate a value of cylinder which is, say, 4.23 into 10 to the power 32 kg. Okay, but the weight of sun is 10 into 10 to the power 2 into 10 to the power 30 kg. So which means you must have done something wrong. You should check your result, check of reasonableness. Okay, in this order of magnitude analysis, let me tell you another point, that when you get something like that okay, I have say I have this kind of scenario. We estimate this as simply 1/5, I would say. It's basically the intermediate step is that 1.46. We neglect the second term because it is so negligible compared to the first term. Even if we add, this value significantly changes. So you basically come to this value. Now here, one thing I forgot to mention last class, and in fact I would draw your attention that it is a kind of a thumb rule, or in fact it was a popular thumb rule, I would say, to truncate the number, because we intuitively we know that this would be 1.4. Okay, but what about this one? We also immediately write that this is 1.3, isn't it? But several textbooks or several thumb rules earlier that used to tell that it is basically 1.2. The rounding of the number, after which we drop this 5, if this is the scenario that happens, is always to make the last digit as even number. Am I clear? So yeah, so this is these are whatever I spoke about this content till now was the very basic fundamentals that we had to know or brush up. Now, say from tomorrow or the next class, I will start in detail about our main concern or the main points that we have to deal is called, we typically say, the processes and its process variables. Let me give you introduction today so that we can begin to next class on a better note. Is that, let me understand again your concept on the moles, mole fraction, these kind of terms. First of all, let's start with specific gravity. So what is specific gravity? And how does it relate with density, water, a reference fluid which we typically take as water? Okay, so basically this means that we say specific gravity, or SG, which is the typical nomenclature we will use throughout the class, is the density of that material divided by the density of water. It is not hard and fast that it has to be water, but typically the reference fluid is water in most of the cases. it's specifically, it's better that if we say this is the reference fluid. And for water, this raw water is 1000 kg per meter cube, which most of the time is not given in the question. But if the temperature or pressure, this particular temperature changes significantly, there will be a slight variation of this density. So now coming to relation between mass flow rate and volume flow rate. If one is given, can you calculate the other? Yes. So basically, mass divided by density gives us the volume. That same concept applies here. If you know one, either divide or multiply it by the density, you get the other one. The important parts are, I mean, in fact, everything is important that I told till now, but the most important are this chemical composition, which are moles, molecular weight, mass, mole fractions, I mean mass and mole fractions, either it's mass fraction or mole fraction, and average molecular weight. When there is a mixture, how do you calculate average molecular weight? And finally, the concentration. Before we go, can you tell me how do you measure mass and volume flow rate or volumetric flow rate? You have started your fluid mechanics class, right? Or fluid dynamics, fluid mechanics class. So how do you measure a flow, particularly say the mass flow?
Rho AV.
Physically, say.
Aim to V.
I'm specifically asking the flow meters. Have you heard the names? Flow meter.
Ventricular meter.
Not. It's called. These are they called rotometer, orifice meter, venturimeter. So you will possibly learn that in that subject. Okay, but these are the things also you should know, that how do we measure those values. Okay, so coming back, that part I am not teaching you here, that what are the different kinds of flow meters and how it operates. That's not under the purview of this course. Okay, but let me ask you that what do you understand by moles, which is a very important concept here. Moles, molecular weight, mass fraction, mole fractions. So we'll discuss this further. So if I tell you, you have to be conversant with this kind of conversion that we ask for. Say I say 34 kg of ammonia. How many mole of ammonia? Say kilomole. 2, right?
2 moles.
2 kilomole rather, because I have asked here kg. Okay, so basically what we do, 34 kg of ammonia, and we have in 1 kilomole we have 17 kg of ammonia. Because the molecular weight of ammonia is 17. So that gives us 2 kilomoles of ammonia. Are you confident that you'd be able to refresh your memory about this conversion, that mass and moles, the first one, if you know their molecular weight, or if you had to calculate their molecular weight? For that, you need this elemental atomic weight. You need to know or remember those values. Yes. That N is 14, H is 1, so I get 17. Okay, yes. So in fact, it's 9 o'clock. You have other classes immediately after this. So I will stop here today.